Before we begin, though, I too would like to join with you in extending our condolences to the families who lost loved ones on Monday, and to those survivors. You know, as a person who's been through a mass shooting myself and seen the impact it can have on everyone, whether you're injured or not, I know what those families are dealing with right now, and I just think all of us should be extending our good wishes, our prayers and thoughts to them as they deal with this terrible, shocking tragedy. So let's remember them always as we think about how this situation is going to unfold. Now, let me go to the point of today's hearing. I think it's important that we have this discussion about how it is that the Department of Homeland Security manages its acquisitions so that we can find solutions to improve the Department's ability to carry out its mission, and I think very importantly, that it do so in a cost-effective and highly accountable manner. When the Department was stood up almost a little over 10 years ago, it was understood that combining 22 different agencies into one department could be very challenging, and that we might in fact see 22 silos emerge within a department, and I think we've certainly seen evidence that that has been an ongoing challenge for the department. And some 11 years later almost, we are still trying to create one cohesive Department of Homeland Security. Over the past 3 years, I do believe the department has worked to improve its acquisition practices and policies and create a more streamlined framework aimed at saving costs and requiring each component to operate by the same set of rules. And while the framework may be in place, it's clear that there remain many challenges and that we must make sure that this framework is fully implemented. Without an acquisition strategy that is adhered to by all DHS components, the Department simply is not able to achieve the economies of scale that help reduce costs and ultimately make effective use of our resources and save the taxpayer money. Now, this is a bit of a dated example, but I remember early on when I was working for Congresswoman Giffords, we learned that one of the most effective tools that the Border Patrol had was the mobile surveillance systems. And yet when we looked into it further, we found that 50% of them in Arizona were out of commission. And why? Because they weren't tough enough to withstand the environmental conditions in the harsh desert climate. It seems to me that at that time, and even still today, we could learn a lot about the technology that we intend to use in those kinds of environments by looking at what is going on, for example, in Afghanistan, where similar conditions in terms of the climate exist, and be able to replicate the right kind of technology for a desert environment. We didn't do it then, but we must continue to try to do better. In a recent Office of Inspector General report, it was revealed that two components had purchased the same radio equipment that was sitting idly in a storage facility, while a third component needed the same equipment. The end result was one of the components could not get the resources it needed, even though they were obviously available. This is just unacceptable. And when the Department and the Federal Government has limited resources, and the taxpayer is watching every penny we spend as they should, we cannot afford to waste these resources. But while the Department has made some strides in saving taxpayer funds through economies of scale, as indicated in this OIG report, there's still a long way to go. The most effective way to achieve uniformity is to ensure that the Department headquarters has the authority to enforce department-wide policies that are aimed at improving governance and efficiency. Moreover, it's clear that in order for the Department to mature into a gold standard among Federal agencies, its acquisition problems must be addressed top-down from headquarters and to each component. Additionally, in addressing these concerns, I believe it's important for the Department to search for best practices both inside the government but also in the private sector. And when working with the private sector, the Department should be transparent and user-friendly by making its procurement processes clear and easy to follow. This is a key to good governance, and I can tell you countless times when I've been approached by contractors and providers or potential providers who have said over and over again how difficult it is to access the Department's procurement process. For this to work, there must be a buy-in at the component level. There must be a department-wide understanding that each component is a part of the overall mission to use resources efficiently in order to effectively secure the homeland. And I think it's important that as we look at using the Department of Defense as a model for DHS, as suggested by the title of today's hearing, we must also recognize that both the mission and structure of the agencies are somewhat different. In many cases, the Department of Homeland Security has implemented procurement practices that have been successful in DoD. But given the differences between these two departments, it's also important that DHS examine its current framework and system and develop a process that takes best practices from both government and private entities into account. DHS must have a system that works for its specific needs and mission, and one that improves upon its flaws and implements OIG and GAO recommendations. As a representative of a district that shares over 80 miles of border with Mexico, I'm very familiar with the amount of money that has been spent by the Department on technologies and assets that have been procured in an effort to secure the border. I'm also aware of some of the waste that's gone on through those purchases. We must ensure that these assets are used to best fulfill their mission. We must do this in a responsible stewards of the American taxpayer. The Department cannot continue to stick the American people with the bill for failed technologies and poorly distributed resources. The Department should develop, I believe, a central acquisition process that fits the needs and mission of the Department and its components, one that incorporates the best practices both from industry and government, and the Department's acquisition and procurement system should be tailored to meet the Department's unique mission, should enable the Department to take advantage of economies of scale, to ensure that the Department pays a reasonable price, and should allow us to be responsible, all of us, stewards of taxpayer dollars. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses and thank them for being here today. I look forward to hearing your statements and then to have questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back the balance of my time.